Being gay in old Hollywood was career suicide, and these stars knew it. They had to hide their true preferences. What better way than a showy, arranged heterosexual marriage? Some of these marriages ended faster than they started. Others lasted till the end of their lives. Either way, all these marriages have something in common. They were a sham. Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates. Rock Hudson was the perfect Hollywood leading man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and charming. Women adored him, studios banked on him, and the press couldn't get enough of him. But the world didn't know that Hudson was gay, a truth he kept hidden. He was in an industry with zero tolerance for rule breakers. Back in the 1950s, being exposed as gay could end an actor's career overnight. Studios treated their stars like chess pieces. They managed everything, from public romances to personal scandals. Hudson's agent, Henry Wilson, was a master at this game. He had already shaped Hudson's career. He gave him a new name. He was born Roy Fitzgerald. He made him the perfect matinee idol. But as rumors about Hudson's private life started swirling, Wilson knew he had a problem. The solution? A quick marriage. In 1955, Hudson suddenly announced his engagement to Phyllis Gates, Wilson's own secretary. The wedding was rushed and the press ate it up. Here was Hollywood's most eligible bachelor settling down with a lovely woman, proof, at least in the eyes of the public, that he was straight. But behind closed doors, the marriage was anything but normal. Hudson reportedly spent more time with his male friends than his wife. Gates later claimed she had no idea he was gay, but many suspect she knew, or at least had her doubts. Some even believe she was pressured into playing along for the sake of his career. The marriage lasted just 3 years before ending in divorce in 1958. After that, Hudson never married again. Instead, he quietly dated men. He kept up the public charade of a Hollywood ladies' man. The studio paired him with glamorous actresses for publicity. He smiled for the cameras, but behind the scenes, he lived a different life. In the 1980s, Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS. Then, his sexuality became widely known. He became the first major celebrity linked to the disease. This put a famous face to the crisis amid widespread misinformation and fear. When he died in 1985, the world saw the real Rock Hudson. Not just the dashing leading man, but a man who had to hide who he was for most of his life. Cary Grant and Virginia Cherrill. Before his many marriages, Grant shared a strong bond with actor Randolph Scott. The two met in 1932 and quickly moved in together, sharing a lavish beach house in Malibu. It wasn't just a roommate situation. They were inseparable. Hollywood photographers even staged playful bachelor photo shoots of the two men, lounging around the house in shorts, cooking together, and playing with their dog. To outsiders, they were just two handsome single actors enjoying life. But those who knew them believed it was much more than that. Of course, in the 1930s, being openly gay wasn't an option, especially not for a rising star like Grant. The studios needed him to be a dashing ladies' man, so they ensured he was often photographed on dates with starlets. Still, the whispers about his relationship with Scott never really went away. To put an end to the speculation, Grant married actress Virginia Cherrill in 1934. The marriage was short-lived, ending in divorce after only a year. Over the years, Grant went on to marry 3 more women: heiress Barbara Hutton, actress Betsy Drake, and Diane Cannon. But even as he played the role of a devoted husband, people who knew him said his heart belonged to Scott. Despite their marriages to women, Grant and Scott reportedly remained close for years. Some even say they rekindled their relationship later in life, away from the Hollywood spotlight. Grant never publicly acknowledged the rumors, and after his demise in 1986, the debate over his sexuality continued. Some of his ex-wives denied he was gay, while others hinted that he had a complicated personal life. Hollywood created a version of Cary Grant. He was the charming romantic star, but the truth was likely much more complicated. Tab Hunter and Natalie Wood. Although they were never officially married, their relationship was carefully curated to cover up Hunter's real orientation. He was Hollywood's all-American boy, blonde, blue-eyed, and the ultimate 1950s heartthrob. He was the guy studios marketed as the perfect boyfriend, often pairing him with starlets like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds for red carpet appearances. But in reality, it was all a lie. Behind the scenes, Hunter was gay, and the studio system did everything it could to keep that fact buried. In the 1950s, an actor being outed could mean the end of their career, and Hunter's bosses at Warner Brothers weren't going to let that happen. Instead, they controlled his image with carefully staged relationships. Natalie Wood, who was also paired with other closeted actors like James Dean, became his go-to date for public events. Meanwhile, Hunter was secretly dating men. One of his most well-known relationships was with fellow actor Anthony Perkins, Psycho. The two were young, rising stars, but Hollywood wasn't about to let them be together openly. In fact, some say that their rival studios purposely tried to separate them, fearing that an exposed gay romance would ruin both their careers. Hunter kept up the act for years, playing along with the studio's game of fake romances and carefully managed publicity. But in 1955, he had a close call when Confidential magazine, a notorious tabloid, got wind of his sexuality. They were preparing to publish an exposé about him being arrested at a gay party. Desperate to protect their investment, Warner Brothers scrambled to squash the story, throwing another actor under the bus instead. Despite the cover-ups and the fake relationships, Hunter knew he could never fully be himself while working in the Hollywood system. He eventually walked away from big studio films, choosing instead to act in independent movies and stage productions. Years later, in his 2005 memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, he finally confirmed what so many had suspected. He was gay, and he had spent years hiding it to survive in Hollywood. Unlike many stars of his time, Hunter lived long enough to see a world where he didn't have to keep pretending. He spent the final decades of his life openly with his longtime partner, producer Alan Glazer, proving that after all the staged romances and studio pressures, he finally got to live on his own terms. Anthony Perkins and Barry Berenson. Best known for playing Norman Bates in Psycho, Perkins had a quiet charm that made him a standout in the 1950s and 60s. But behind the camera, Perkins was living a life completely at odds with the roles he played. Like many actors of his time, Perkins was gay, but forced to hide it. In Hollywood, being out wasn't an option, especially for someone aiming for leading man status. He had relationships with men, including fellow actor Tab Hunter, but everything had to be kept behind closed doors. Studios worked hard to control his image, and just like Hunter, Perkins was occasionally paired with female stars for public appearances. But Perkins was different from some of his closeted peers. He genuinely struggled with his identity. Unlike Rock Hudson or Cary Grant, who played along with Hollywood's game while quietly dating men, Perkins was deeply conflicted about his sexuality. He reportedly underwent therapy to try to change, and for years he avoided serious relationships with men out of fear of being exposed. Then, in the early 1970s, something unexpected happened. He got married. His wife, Barry Berenson, was a model and actress, and many people were shocked by the sudden turn in his personal life. Some believed he had finally found happiness with a woman, while others suspected it was another carefully managed move to protect his career. Whatever the reason, Perkins and Berenson stayed together for nearly 2 decades and had 2 sons, but many close to him say that despite his marriage, he never completely abandoned his attraction to men. Tragically, Perkins's life was cut short when he was diagnosed with AIDS in the early 1990s. Like Hudson before him, he kept his illness private until the very end. He passed away in 1992, one of many stars who had spent their lives hiding a part of themselves just to survive in Hollywood. Ironically, the man who played one of cinema's most famous repressed characters, Norman Bates, had spent much of his own life battling repression. In the end, Perkins's story was one of talent, internal struggle, and a Hollywood system that never let him be fully himself. Randolph Scott and Patricia Stillman. For years, Scott was romantically linked to another Hollywood icon, Cary Grant. The two met in 1932 while filming Hot Saturday and quickly became inseparable. Soon after, they moved in together, sharing a home in Malibu. The press dubbed it a bachelor pad, but many believe it was something much more. Photographers were even invited to their house for carefully staged photo shoots, pictures of them cooking together, working out, lounging by the pool, and laughing over breakfast. To the public, they were just two handsome actors living the good life. But behind closed doors, most in Hollywood suspected they were a couple. The rumors, of course, weren't good for their careers. Hollywood in the 1930s and 40s wasn't ready for an openly gay leading man, let alone two. The studios pressured them to separate, and eventually both men married women. Scott first in a brief marriage to heiress Marion DuPont in 1936, and later to Patricia Stillman in 1944. He stayed married to Stillman for the rest of his life, but many believe it was more about appearances than romance. Even after Grant married multiple times, he and Scott remained close. Some say they rekindled their relationship later in life, though neither ever spoke publicly about it. Scott eventually retired from Hollywood and lived a quiet life away from the spotlight. When he passed away in 1987, his longtime friendship with Grant remained one of Hollywood's most talked about open secrets. To this day, their relationship is debated. Were they just close friends, or were they forced to hide a love that Hollywood refused to accept? While the truth might never be fully known, one thing is certain: Randolph Scott and Cary Grant's story is one of the longest-running whispers in Hollywood history. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor. Whether she was playing a femme fatale in Double Indemnity or a sharp-tongued socialite in The Lady Eve, she brought a level of confidence and strength that made her unforgettable. But when it came to her personal life, things were a lot more complicated. Stanwyck was rumored to be a lesbian for most of her career, though Hollywood worked hard to keep that under wraps. During a time when studios controlled their stars' images, being a powerful, independent woman who never seemed interested in men raised a lot of eyebrows. To squash any speculation, she married twice. Her first marriage was to actor Frank Fay in 1928, and it was a disaster. Fay was an abusive alcoholic, and their relationship was anything but happy. They adopted a son together, but by 1935, the marriage was over. Her second marriage, to actor Robert Taylor, was more about appearances than romance. The two were paired together by MGM, who needed their rising stars to look like the perfect Hollywood couple. They married in 1939 and stayed together for over a decade, but many believe it was strictly a studio-arranged marriage. Taylor was rumored to have had relationships with men, and Stanwyck, despite being linked to a few leading men for publicity, was constantly surrounded by women. Off-screen, Stanwyck spent most of her time with close female friends, including actress Joan Crawford and her longtime companion, Helen Ferguson. Though she never confirmed or spoke about her sexuality, many insiders believed she was a lesbian who, like so many others in Hollywood, had to keep that part of herself hidden to protect her career. After her divorce from Taylor in 1951, she never remarried. Instead, she focused entirely on her work, becoming one of the few actresses who successfully transitioned from classic films to television. Stanwyck remained fiercely private until her death in 1990. While she never publicly came out, the whispers never stopped. Whether Hollywood forced her to play the role of a straight woman, or whether she simply chose to keep her private life to herself, Barbara Stanwyck's story remains one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets. Vincente Minnelli and Judy Garland. Judy Garland was one of the most beloved stars of all time, a once-in-a-generation talent with a voice that could bring audiences to tears. But while the world saw her as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, or the tragic yet dazzling star of A Star is Born, her personal life was a storm of heartbreak, pressure, and carefully crafted Hollywood illusions. One of those illusions? Her second marriage to director Vincente Minnelli, who was widely believed to be gay. Garland's love life was as dramatic as her performances. 5 marriages, countless affairs, and a constant battle with the expectations placed on her. But her marriage to Minnelli was one of the most talked about. The two met when he directed her in Meet Me in St. Louis, 1944, and soon after they were married. At the time, Garland was already struggling with addiction and insecurity, largely due to the control Hollywood had over her life since she was a child. The studio, always aware of public perception, saw Minnelli as the perfect husband, an artistic, sophisticated man who could keep their star in check. But behind the scenes, Minnelli had a long history of being linked to men. Before he met Garland, He was part of the New York theater scene, where he was known for his relationships with young male artists and actors. Hollywood insiders knew the rumors, but MGM, eager to maintain Garland's wholesome image, pushed for the marriage anyway. Despite the circumstances, the marriage lasted 6 years, and they had one child together, Liza Minnelli, who would go on to be a star in her own right. But their relationship was never truly romantic. Garland, deeply insecure and struggling with drug use, was desperate for stability, while Minnelli was quietly leading a double life. Eventually, the facade cracked, and they divorced in 1951. Minnelli went on to marry 3 more times, always to women, but the rumors about his sexuality never faded. Meanwhile, Garland continued her tumultuous journey through Hollywood, battling addiction, financial troubles, and more failed marriages. While Garland herself wasn't gay, she became a lifelong icon for the LGBTQ+ community. Perhaps because she, too, knew what it was like to live under constant pressure, always performing, even when the show was over. Vincent Price and Coral Brown. Price was the ultimate creepy guy in classic horror films. Think House of Wax, The Fly, and The Abominable Dr. Phibes. His signature deep voice and chilling presence made him one of Hollywood's most beloved villains. But what many didn't know was that off-screen, Price's personal life was much more complex than the dark characters he played. Though he was married 3 times to women, there were whispers throughout Hollywood that Price had relationships with men as well. Those whispers grew louder in the 1970s when his daughter, Victoria Price, revealed in a 2011 interview that her father was bisexual. It was a well-known fact within his circle, though he never publicly acknowledged it during his lifetime. Price's first marriage was to actress Edith Barrett in 1938. They had 1 son before divorcing in 1948. After that, he married Mary Grant in 1949, and they stayed together until her death in 1973. His final marriage was to actress Coral Brown, whom he married in 1974. Brown later said that she knew of Price's bisexuality, and some believe she was fully accepting of his past relationships with men. Behind the scenes, Price had close friendships with men that went beyond simple camaraderie. One of his most significant and long-lasting relationships was with actor and writer Charles Laughton. Many believed that their connection went far beyond friendship, and some even speculated that the two had a romantic relationship. Though nothing was ever confirmed, their bond was undeniable. Despite the rumors and his private relationships, Price's image remained largely intact. He continued to appear in films, especially in the horror genre, where he became a legend. Price also made appearances on television and hosted his own series, Vincent Price's Cooking with Wine. Price's bisexuality only became more widely acknowledged after his death in 1993, as more of his private life came to light. The fact that he was able to navigate a career as an openly supportive figure in a time when LGBTQ+ identities were heavily stigmatized shows just how complicated Hollywood could be for its stars. In a career filled with horror and mystery, Vincent Price's own story remains one of the most intriguing and hidden of all. George Cukor and Tina Elg. George Cukor, the legendary director behind iconic films like My Fair Lady and The Philadelphia Story, was one of Hollywood's most respected directors. But Cukor's personal life was far more private. He was widely known to be gay, though he never publicly acknowledged it during his lifetime. In an era when Hollywood demanded conformity to heterosexual norms, Cukor's sexuality was an open secret, and his career was built on maintaining a carefully crafted public persona. To protect that persona and avoid the kind of scandal that could jeopardize his career, Cukor married actress Tina Elg in 1954. Elg was a talented actress known for her work in musicals, but their marriage didn't last long. It ended in less than a year. The union was widely seen as a strategic move to silence rumors about Cukor's sexuality and to present him as a conventional, family-oriented man to the public. Though Cukor's marriage to Elg was brief, it didn't stop Hollywood's whispering about his true identity. He continued to live openly with men, with some close friends and colleagues acknowledging his romantic relationships with men, though he kept it all very much out of the public eye. Despite the marriage being a cover-up, Cukor's career thrived. He was known as a director who got the best performances out of his actresses, and he mentored many stars of the time. His close relationships with stars like Katharine Hepburn and Joan Crawford were well known, but no one ever publicly addressed the fact that his personal life was far more complex than anyone realized. Cukor's story is one of navigating the Hollywood system with a carefully guarded personal life, and his marriage to Tina Elg was just one part of that complex and secretive journey. Marlene Dietrich and Rudolph Sieber. Marlene Dietrich was one of the most iconic stars of Hollywood's golden age, an unforgettable actress and singer known for her sultry voice, dramatic presence, and roles in films like The Blue Angel and Morocco. She reinvented what it meant to be a femme fatale, captivating audiences with her magnetic charisma. But behind the glitz and glamour, Dietrich led a private life full of complexities and secrets, especially when it came to her relationships. While Dietrich was married to her husband, Rudolph Sieber, for over 5 decades from 1923 until his demise in 1976, their relationship was widely considered to be a cover-up. Sieber was often absent due to his work in the film industry, and their marriage was believed to be more of a partnership than a passionate love affair. Dietrich was rumored to have had a number of relationships with women, which she fiercely protected from the public eye. Among the women Dietrich was linked to were 2 of the most intriguing figures in Hollywood history: singer Edith Piaf and screenwriter Mercedes d'Acosta. Piaf, the legendary French singer, was said to have had a romantic relationship with Dietrich during the 1930s, though neither woman ever publicly acknowledged it. Mercedes d'Acosta, a known lover of many Hollywood stars, had a long-standing rumored affair with Dietrich. D'Acosta was one of the few women Dietrich was ever openly close to, and the two were often seen together, leading to widespread speculation about their relationship. Despite these rumored relationships, Dietrich continued to publicly maintain a heterosexual image. Her marriage to Sieber helped her maintain that image, and she was even photographed with him at public events, although it seemed to be more for the sake of appearances than any genuine connection. Dietrich's sole identity was a well-kept secret for much of her life, and she was known to be fiercely protective of her private affairs. Even as her relationships with women became an open secret in Hollywood, she refused to discuss her personal life, leading many to see her as a trailblazer who refused to conform to society's expectations.